I want you to put yourself in a very specific situation for a second.
Okay.
Imagine you are standing alone at a bus stop.
Mm-hmm.
It is well past midnight. The temperature is hovering right around freezing,
Yeah.
and the wind is just howling through the concrete canyons of the city.
Oh, I can feel that. That biting cold.
Right. You're waiting for the very last transit option of the entire night, and the streets around you are just completely empty. There are no cars, no pedestrians, just you and that sort of flickering, buzzing hum of the streetlights overhead.
That is such a deeply vulnerable feeling.
It really is. You're freezing, you're exhausted, you just want to get back to the safety of your home. And then finally you see the headlights cutting through the darkness in the distance.
Thank goodness.
Exactly. You step onto the bus, feeling this massive wave of relief. But as those pneumatic doors hiss shut behind you, effectively locking you inside the cabin, you start to get this creeping instinctual realization that maybe you shouldn't have gotten on board.
It's a universally terrifying scenario to picture. I mean, we've all been at the mercy of late-night public transit at some point in our lives, feeling completely isolated in a space that is usually, packed with people.
Yeah, that shared vulnerability perfectly sets the stage for the material we are analyzing today. Welcome to the Deep Dive, everybody. I am your host, Jack.
And I am.
And we also have our special guest in the studio today, currently sprawled out on the rug.
Yes, Max is with us, our resident German Shepherd.
The tender tank paw himself.
He really is a tender tank, just a huge, powerful dog with the most gentle soul.
Though he might be asleep already. If you hear any heavy huffing or snoring during the show, that is just Max contributing to the atmosphere.
He's remarkably calm compared to Chanel, our last husky guest. She would have been howling at the story we're covering today.
Oh, absolutely. Because today, our deep dive is taking us straight into the heart of a famous, spine-chilling story from Beijing. We are looking at the mystery of the Route 375 midnight bus from November 1995.
Ooh, this is a classic.
It is. If you ask a local in Beijing of a certain age about Route 375, you will physically see their expression change. It's one of those stories that has just deeply embedded itself into the cultural consciousness of the city.
But our mission today goes far beyond just, telling a ghost story around a digital campfire.
Right.
We're going to dissect the anatomy of an urban legend. We'll explore the highly specific narrative facts of this tale, examine how the story utilizes particular atmospheric concepts to bypass our logic and trigger our deepest human fears, and then unpack the fascinating real-world investigation that attempted to uncover the truth behind the myth.
So let's start by laying out the narrative exactly as the sources present it. The timeline places us on November 14th, 1995. And as I mentioned in the hook, it's incredibly late. We are dealing with a bitter, near-freezing northern winter night in Beijing.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of environment does that create for a story like this?
Well, Beijing in 1995 is a really crucial backdrop here. This was a period of rapid urbanization, but the city still had vast stretches of quiet, underdeveloped areas, especially on the outskirts.
Right, the edges of the city.
Exactly. And the cold there is biting. It drives everyone indoors. The narrative establishes a profoundly desolate scene.
Okay, let's pause there and look at that word for a second, because that's a great analytical tool for us. Desolate. D-E-S-O-L-A-T-E.
Yes.
When we say a scene is desolate, we mean it is completely empty, bleak, abandoned. It's stripped of warmth and light.
Stripped of the usual hustle and bustle of society. And when an environment is painted as desolate, it creates a psychological vacuum. It removes the safety net of civilization.
Because there are no witnesses around.
None. There is no help coming. By establishing this profound isolation early on, the narrative subtly informs your brain that the rules of the daytime world no longer apply here. It primes the listener for the paranormal.
Events beyond scientific explanation.
Exactly. The route itself plays heavily into that isolation, too. It's Route 375, making its final run of the night between Yuanmingyuan, which is the site of the old Summer Palace ruins,
Very atmospheric.
and Shangshan, the fragrant hills. The sources specifically note that no taxis would even bother driving this dark, winding stretch at this hour.
It's just this one lone bus crawling toward the mountains. So let's look at who's actually on board this final bus.
The passenger list is remarkably ordinary, which really grounds the story in reality.
Yeah, you have an older driver who has been behind the wheel all day and is operating on pure exhaustion.
There's a young female ticket inspector.
Right. And scattered among the empty rows, you have a young couple sitting near the front, an elderly woman, right around her 60s, and a young man in his 20s.
Just tired, everyday people trapped in a metal tube, completely oblivious to what is waiting for them up the road.
Listen to Max sighing over there.
Yeah.
Even he knows something bad is coming.
He's sensing the tension.
He really is. So that brings us to the inciting incident. They're about 300 meters past the Beijing stop when the driver is suddenly shocked to see silhouettes waving frantically in the darkness ahead.
Oh.
Now, my immediate thought is, if I'm driving an empty bus in the middle of nowhere and see shadows waving from the side of the road, I am hitting the gas.
Oh, 100%.
This isn't even an official stop. Does he actually want to pull over?
He absolutely does not. The driver actually complains out loud. He questions what kind of lunatics are standing out in the middle of nowhere at midnight.
Right. His instinct is pure self-preservation.
But the young ticket inspector intervenes. Driven by just a sense of pure empathy, she urges him to stop.
Oh, no.
She points out that the temperature is dropping. This is the very last transit option of the night. And if they leave these people behind, they could literally freeze to death walking home.
That one little act of kindness seals their fate.
It really does.
The driver relents, he hits the brakes, and the doors open. Now, from a distance, it looked like two silhouettes in the headlights. But as they step into the dim interior lighting of the bus, the terrifying reality is revealed. 3 figures board, not 2.
This visual is so incredibly vivid.
It's 2 men, and they are physically dragging a third figure between them. This third person is hanging completely limp, their head drooping forward so far that their hair completely obscures their face.
The visual description of these figures is where the story shifts from a slightly creepy encounter into just full-blown horror.
Yeah.
They are described as wearing formal, dark Qing Dynasty official robes.
Lead to wild.
And their faces are unnaturally pale, completely drained of color, resembling thick white powder. They bypass the ticket inspector without paying, they don't utter a single syllable, and they simply shuffle to the very back row of the bus and sit down in absolute silence.
I mean, if I'm sitting on that bus, my brain is completely short-circuiting. You don't just see people in antique imperial robes carrying a limp body onto a public bus in the 1990s. How do the normal passengers even react to this?
Well, what's fascinating here is the profound psychological shift that takes place the moment those figures sit down. The atmosphere transforms into something deeply eerie.
Eerie. E-E-R-I-E. Let's unpack that word. Eerie describes something strange in a way that makes you fundamentally uneasy. It's not a jump scare. It's a lingering, unnatural dread.
Yes, the uncanny valley takes over. The young couple at the front exchanges these terrified, nervous glances.
Right.
The ticket inspector, whose entire job is to walk to the back and collect the fare, finds her feet literally glued to the floor. Her survival instincts override her training.
Because the environment paralyzes them. Their brains are desperately trying to process visual data that completely defies logic.
And the silence of the figures violates every unspoken social contract of a public space.
But while everyone else is frozen by this overwhelming dread, the elderly woman is actively observing the newcomers.
She's the only one really watching.
She is watching the back row.
Yeah.
And she notices a detail that pushes the narrative completely over the edge.
This gives me chills every time.
A draft sweeps through the bus. A gust of wind catches the dark fabric of the figure's robes, lifting the hems just a few inches. And she sees that there is absolutely nothing beneath them.
No feet.
No shoes.
Just empty air. They are hovering centimeters above the floorboards.
Just imagine the sheer terror of being that elderly woman. You are sitting in the cold, flickering light, and you suddenly possess the undeniable knowledge that you are trapped in a moving vehicle with entities that are not human.
It's a nightmare.
If I see that, I am probably screaming, which is the worst possible move. What does she actually do?
Her reaction elevates this narrative from a standard ghost story into a brilliant display of survival psychology.
How so?
She understands intuitively that acknowledging the supernatural threat might trigger a reaction from the entities.
Oh, like if they know that she knows.
Exactly. She needs an escape route that doesn't involve pointing out the hovering ghosts. So she manufactures a completely mundane human crisis to override the paranormal one.
She suddenly leaps out of her seat, storms over to the young man sitting a few rows away, and physically grabs him by the collar.
It's so smart.
She starts screaming at the top of her lungs, accusing this totally innocent kid of stealing her wallet. She creates an absolute scene.
She weaponizes social embarrassment and conflict. The young man is entirely bewildered. His face turns red. He starts arguing back, defending himself because he obviously didn't take anything.
Of course not.
But the elderly woman refuses to let it go. She demands that the exhausted driver pull the bus over immediately so they can march to the nearest police station and settle the theft.
And the driver, who is already incredibly unnerved by the silent men in the back and now has to deal with a screaming match at the front of his bus, he just wants the headache to end.
He's done.
He slams on the brakes, opens the doors, and essentially throws both the old woman and the young man out into the freezing night.
And the moment those doors hiss shut and the bus drives off into the darkness, the elderly woman's entire demeanor completely drops.
The adrenaline fades.
Yeah, and the reality of what just happened sets in. She turns to the furious young man, drops her voice to a desperate whisper, and tells him that she didn't lose her wallet.
She tells him she just saved his life.
She describes the Qing Dynasty robes, the pale faces, and the horrifying absence of legs under the fabric. She makes him realize how close he came to disappearing.
And that revelation prompts the young man to go straight to the local police station that very night. He files a report detailing the bizarre encounter.
Which the police probably thought was crazy.
Oh, the police take his statement, likely assuming he's intoxicated or dealing with some kind of delusion, and they just send him home.
Naturally.
But the aftermath of that night is where the story shifts from a spooky encounter into a grim, undeniable physical nightmare. Because the next morning, the local transit depot reports a major problem. Route 375 never finished its scheduled run.
The bus, the driver, and the ticket inspector have all vanished.
A massive search operation is launched by the authorities. They scour the route, the surrounding roads, the ditches. 3 agonizing days pass without a single clue.
Max is heavily asleep right now, totally unaware of the tension.
Good for him, honestly. He's safe on the rug. But out in the story, finally, the abandoned bus is discovered. But the location makes absolutely no sense. It is found over 100 kilometers away, parked near the Mian Reservoir.
That is in the complete opposite direction of where Route 375 was heading. It was supposed to be crawling toward the Fragrant Hills.
Exactly. And the horrors inside the bus are even worse. They find 3 bodies, the driver, the ticket inspector, and an unidentified third person. But the condition of the bodies completely baffles the investigators.
The bodies are found in an impossibly advanced state of decomposition. Keep in mind the environmental factors we established earlier.
The cold.
Right. It is late November in northern China. The temperatures are hovering near freezing. In those specific climate conditions, the cold acts as a natural preservative.
A human body simply does not break down into advanced decay in a matter of 72 hours under freezing conditions.
It's a complete scientific impossibility.
Which brings us to another key vocabulary term for our deep dive today: forensic. F-O-R-E-N-S-I-C. Forensic relates to the use of scientific methods in crime investigation.
And the forensic teams analyzing this scene were left with an unsolvable puzzle. The biological breakdown was confirmed to be natural.
Meaning there were no chemical accelerants or artificial means used to speed up the process.
Yet the timeline contradicted every known law of biology. It defied all rational crime scene analysis.
But as if the location and the impossible decomposition weren't enough, the investigators make one final discovery that permanently cements this story into legend.
The detail that everyone remembered.
They inspect the mechanical state of the bus. They check the fuel tank. Now, considering this was the very last run of the night, that tank should have been running on fumes.
Right, it certainly did not possess enough diesel to drive 100 kilometers out to a remote reservoir.
But when the mechanics open the cap, the tank isn't empty. It is filled to the absolute brim. But it isn't filled with gasoline. The entire massive fuel tank of this public transit bus is full of fresh blood.
The sheer volume of blood required to fill a commercial transit fuel tank is staggering. We are talking about dozens of gallons.
It pushes the narrative past a simple haunting and into the realm of visceral cosmic horror.
It is the punctuation mark that makes the story impossible to forget.
Okay, let's unpack this. I need to take a breath here. As a piece of storytelling, that is phenomenal. It hits every single nerve.
It's terrifying.
But our mission with this deep dive is to look at the anatomy of the legend. We have the myth, now we need the reality. When investigators and journalists actually dug into the historical record to verify this event, what did they uncover?
Well, they found a reality that starkly contrasted with the myth. Researchers went to the National Library of China to conduct a thorough review of the archives.
They pulled the receipts.
They really did. They pulled every single edition of the Beijing Evening News, along with other local publications, from November 14th through the end of the month in 1995. They looked for police blotters, missing persons reports, transit authority announcements.
And the result of that massive archival search?
Absolute silence. There was zero coverage.
None at all.
No missing bus, no missing transit workers, no frantic search operations, and certainly no horrific discovery at the Mion Reservoir.
I mean, an event of that magnitude, a stolen public bus, multiple missing persons, and a gruesome crime scene, that would have dominated local news for weeks.
Absolutely. The lack of any paper trail was the first major blow to the story's authenticity.
And the researchers didn't stop at the newspapers either. They looked at the actual city planning and transit maps from 1995. It turns out the very geography of the legend was fundamentally flawed.
How so?
The real Route 375 during that specific year did not run between Yuanmingyu and Qingshan. The actual route ran from Zijimen to Bigongmen. The foundational setting of the story was entirely fabricated.
The realization that the event never happened leads to a much more interesting question, really. How does a story with such vivid, hyper-specific details, the Qing Dynasty robes, the hovering the blood in the tank?
How does it come into existence and convince an entire generation of its truth?
Yes. Where did it come from?
The source material traces the origins back to a fascinating cultural blender. It turns out the modern version of the Route 375 legend is an amalgamation of several different pieces of media. The story as we know it really caught fire and went viral from a post made in 2002 on the Tianya Forum.
For context, the Tianya Forum in the early 2000s was essentially the epicenter of Chinese internet culture.
It was massive.
It was a massive text-heavy community where users shared stories, debated news, and posted fiction. And in those early days of the internet, the line between a creative writing exercise and a reported piece of news was incredibly blurry.
People didn't have the skepticism they have now.
A well-written story could easily be taken as fact and forwarded across thousands of email chains.
But the Tianya poster didn't invent the concept out of thin air. Researchers noted that the narrative structure heavily borrowed from a highly popular Taiwanese ghost storytelling television show that aired in the 1990s.
Ah, so visual media played a role.
Yes, and layered on top of that visual influence were the auditory scares popularized by a horror narrator named Zhang Zhen.
Oh, Zhang Zhen's influence cannot be overstated here. In the late 90s, his audio cassette tapes were circulating everywhere.
People were passing them around.
People were listening to his terrifying, immersive stories on Walkmans, often alone in the dark.
Right?
The intimacy of audio storytelling makes the fear feel incredibly personal. The Route 375 legend took the visual tropes of the Taiwanese TV shows, the immersive psychological dread of Zhang Zhen's cassettes, and the viral distribution power of the Tianya Forum, and just fused them into the ultimate modern myth.
And that leads us to our final key term, urban legend. An urban legend is a modern, scary story people believe is true, often set in a recognizable local place. It's a masterclass in how an urban legend is born. We know it isn't true, but that begs the question, why does it matter?
Why do tens of thousands of people choose to believe, or at least entertain, a story that can be so easily debunked by looking at an old transit map?
Exactly.
Because urban legends serve a distinct psychological purpose. They don't have to be factually true to be emotionally resonant. They are designed to tap into real, universal anxieties. Look at Beijing in the mid-90s.
It was exploding.
The city was expanding at a breakneck pace. Massive ring roads were being built, old neighborhoods were being demolished, and the infrastructure was stretching further into the unknown edges of the countryside.
The city was changing faster than the human mind could comfortably process.
Precisely. Cities are supposed to be places of logic, grids, and predictable schedules. A public bus route is the absolute epitome of modern, safe infrastructure. It runs on a timetable, it follows a set path.
So when an urban legend introduces the chaotic, uncontrollable supernatural into that highly structured environment, it violates our foundational sense of safety.
It gives a face and a narrative to the latent anxiety we all feel when we are alone in a massive, sprawling metropolis late at night.
The fear of the dark, the fear of strangers, the fear of being forgotten by the city.
The Route 375 story wraps all those abstract fears into one terrifying, digestible package.
And the cultural impact of that package is undeniable. This wasn't just a story that stayed on message boards. It bled back into the real world.
It really did.
In 2015, a feature-length horror film was produced based entirely on the Route 375 legend. Even crazier, bus drivers operating the real Route 375 in modern-day Beijing have reported picking up thrill seekers who ride the bus late at night, specifically because they want to experience the dread.
They want to sit in the back row and see if they can feel that chill in the air.
The fictional narrative became so powerful that it overwrote the physical reality of the city. A mundane bus route was transformed into a monument to a ghost story.
It shows the incredible power of shared storytelling. The vocabulary of fear, the desolate settings, the eerie encounters, the impossible forensic aftermath. It shapes our emotional reality long after the logical brain knows it's all a trick.
Speaking of vocabulary shaping reality, for those of you listening who are fascinated by how words influence our perception, or if you're an English learner wanting to really master these nuances, I highly recommend checking out the book Sound Like a Local. It's available right now on Amazon, and it's a fantastic resource for diving deeper into the kind of descriptive language we've been breaking down today.
It's a great tool for truly understanding the weight of words like eerie and desolate. It makes you look at the mundane infrastructure around you in a completely different light.
It really does. We have covered a lot of ground today. We started standing in the freezing wind, waiting for a bus that would take us into a nightmare.
We watched an elderly woman use a brilliant grasp of human psychology to orchestrate an escape.
We waded through the grim, impossible aftermath of a crime scene that defied biology. And finally, we pulled back the curtain to reveal the architecture of the myth itself, tracing it from Taiwanese television to audiocassettes to the early days of the internet.
Our minds are constantly seeking out patterns, mysteries, and dangers. We're wired to tell stories that help us process the overwhelming scale of the world around us. The Route 375 legend is a testament to that human need.
Which leaves me with one final thought for you to chew on as we wrap up this deep dive. If a story that was entirely fabricated, pieced together from a 2002 internet forum and old cassette tapes, can completely alter the way tens of thousands of people view a simple, everyday bus route, what other established facts about the dark corners of your own city are just the ghosts of someone else's imagination?
A fantastic question to keep in mind the next time you find yourself waiting alone for transit in the dark.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, stay observant, and we will catch you next time.
Good night, everyone. Good night, Max.
Look at him. He didn't even stir. Have a good one, everybody.